Oh my gosh, that felt good. Okay, so we are recording, we are live streaming in Facebook. We're doing it all here, folks, and we're doing it in the Indie Cooks group. Okay, so what are we doing today? Well, tonight I'm going solo. I don't have an interview tonight, and so it's just little old me in my little old kitchen here, and we're going to talk about kitchen skills. Okay, now I haven't been doing these for a while, but I wanted to kind of go back in time and in history, you know how that works, right? And just kind of touch on how this all started. First of all, if you don't know me, I am Dave Nelson, and I started the Indie Cooks Facebook group many years ago, and I've been doing live videos. Before that, I was a teacher for many, many years. What did I teach? I taught culinary life skills, culinary job skills. And so I have probably thousands of students out there that have gone through my classes. I've taught just about everything in the culinary arts world that you can think of. And I just love what I do. I think you can see that I am enthusiastic about the subject matter at hand. And so I taught for years, as I said. I was taking it to mainly teaching career skills, right? I was bringing young prospective chefs through the ranks, you know, just introducing them to culinary technique just enough to where they wouldn't cry when they got into a real kitchen. And I did this for years in a for-profit environment. I actually got a few ex-students out there that are watching right now. Hey guys, good to see you. I'm loving seeing all you guys still out there. Hope you guys are all still living the life, okay? Eating well, I hope. And like I said, for profit, I did that for many, many years. And then I eventually moved into community colleges. I worked at a women's prison, put together a career skills program for them, teaching culinary arts. And I deeply, deeply feel that this is life skills, okay? Everything in the kitchen is a life skill. And so many people have just kind of lost that. We have lost that as a society. And as time went on, that feeling in me started growing and growing. And eventually one day we read about the death of Anthony Bourdain. And that's when I kind of decided to take this to the public. And so I started doing live shows around my town of Sacramento, California. I was introducing culinary career cooking. I was teaching cooking the way we teach chefs how to cook, which is, it's not what you see on food TV. It's not recipe based. Everything I do is technique based, broken down into a base technique. Did I use recipes? Yes, I use recipes, but only to put a technique out there in front of my students. The recipes are a vehicle for a certain technique. So I did this for many, many years. As I said, Anthony Bourdain died. I started doing live shows for the public, and I was doing things at the local co-op and just basically renting hall space and putting on a live kitchen show, doing what I saw as a void in what Food Network was doing. And so I kept doing that, kept that up. Eventually, I was still working the gig economy at the time, so I was still teaching classes. I was working on multiple campuses around town, doing the live shows, and then all of a sudden, COVID hit, all of that came to a screeching halt. And at that time, I took everything online. It took me about 2 days of sitting in my chair, chewing on my fingernails, like, what am I going to do? And I jumped online and started doing these classes out of my kitchen. The very same classes, the very same lectures that I was delivering in my culinary programs that I was putting out there for the public and for students at large, right? And so I did that for maybe about a year and a half while COVID was kind of in its going strong. I was also doing interviews. I was reaching out to every chef that I knew to ask them how they're making it through COVID. And so I kind of got a giant stable of technique videos as well as interview videos. Sorry, my cat's jumped up here and he's kind of messing with my studio back there. Knock it off, boy. Okay, so anyway, long story short, I've got this huge stable of videos out on YouTube. You can check them out at Indie Cooks. Hey, you're not allowed up here. Come on, boy. Come on. Get on out of here. Well, what the heck? We can have the cat join us. The wife's not here and we're all alone. So back to it. We are, doing videos every Monday, sometimes every Thursday, interviews, things like that. And then eventually we wound up moving to the Pacific Northwest. So I'm up in Seattle area now, doing a job. I eventually got an adult job, and kind of got that. And I put this all to the side trying to master my adult job. And so eventually I kind of got to where I'm feeling comfortable about it. And a few weeks back, I started the whole show rolling again. And so I've done a couple of interviews. And tonight I am doing the first culinary skills demo since coming back. Now, as I was doing the videos before, they were very, very involved. I was basically making myself dinner. And so there were a lot of techniques. Some of these shows were pretty long. So I might, I was looking at, one similar to tonight where I broke down a chicken. I talked about making a stock out of that. I went through saute, the technique of saute or grill, I think it was, right? I made a compound butter. I made pilaf. I discussed the pilaf method, right? It was this huge class, overarching. Tonight, I'm just going to do a short one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start out by breaking a bird. That's the name of this course, the class tonight, whatever you want to call this, the show, right? Breaking bird. And so I'm going to take a chicken. I'm going to break it down into as many constituent parts as I possibly can. It's basically, showing you as many cuts as we might see in the industry out there and giving you as much information I can in one bird. And that's what you're going to see tonight. And so we're going to get into it. We're going to do this single technique. I'm going to break down a bird and that's it. Okay. So sit back, enjoy, get yourself a little something to refresh yourself as this proceeds. And ladies and gentlemen, we're breaking birds. Okay. All right. So let me grab the star of our show tonight. It's not me. Okay. It's my bird. Da, 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 da. Okay, so I went in, I grabbed a chicken. Let me do a little scene change here now that we've done the intro. And so I just grabbed a regular bird. There's nothing fancy. There are many birds like this, but this one is mine, okay? We are going to be going over basically what this bird looks like whole. We're going to be talking about the inside of it. And as I said, I'm going to break it into as many constituent parts as one might see out in the industry as possible, if that makes sense. Okay, so let me get on an apron. My Mrs. Nelson, she's always on me about messing up my t-shirts and everything, and so I got to wear an apron here. I'm not gonna hear the end of it. All right, James is out there, Jacob's out there, nice. Brandy's out there. All of these former students. Brandy, good seeing you. Awesome. Okay. It's been so long since I tied on an apron backwards. I almost forgot how to just tie my apron tonight. Okay. So let's get into this. I'm going to go on and I've already washed my hands. The next thing I'm going to do is put on the old murder gloves, as I call them, the black gloves. They look so cool. But chicken is just one of those things I don't like to touch with my bare hands. And once I get started on this, I'm probably going to have the camera down. I'm going to be covered in chicken juice. And so I'm not going to be touching my camera all that much. So once we go down on this cutting board with the camera, you're probably not going to see much of me, which is probably okay because I think the bird's a little more handsome than I am. Don't you? Don't you? All right, here we go. Yes. Okay. Got the murder gloves on and I'm going to roll my bird on out and we're going to get this party started. All right, hopefully you can see that. I got to get a good camera. Oh, that's very nice right there. And away we go. Hopefully you guys can all hear me all right. If you cannot, please shout out and I'll do a little something about that. And let's see, before we really address the bird, let me address my tools. How's that? Okay, I'll go through this. First of all, I have a boning knife here. This is what we call a flexible boning knife. You can kind of bend it, kind of a funny angle there, but it's a bendable knife, flexible, and this is going to allow me to flex into the bone as I'm cutting and really get up against that bone and get all of the meat off of this bird carcass as I can. Okay, so flexible boning knife. One of the key things to point out here is this curved tip here, much like a scalpel. And so one of the things you're going to notice as I do this bird, I'm not going to be sawing at this bird. I'm going to be doing long, smooth cuts with it, much like a surgeon with a scalpel. And that is just the perfect tool for it. The tip of this knife, we usually don't use the back of this much. We're just going to use the tip. I'm going to do a few little things with this chef's knife here. Just because it's heavy, when you see me use that, I'll usually be cutting through bones or something, and I'm going to use this heaviest part of the blade here. And then another thing I brought along to the party is just a butcher's steel. If you don't have a butcher's steel, let me pull back there. If you don't have a butcher's steel, you need one. You need to be using it all the time. I'm going to say that again. You need to use that butcher steel all the time to keep the edge fresh and honed on your blade. It doesn't sharpen, it just keeps that edge dressed so you can always make clean cuts all the time. It's a beautiful thing. And if you have a steel, I guarantee you're not using it enough. It needs to be on your table all the time when you're working, okay? Now, those are the tools of the trade for breaking chickens. Next, let's look at the bird here, okay? Now, obviously, we are breast side up here. You can see that big, meaty breast there. You look at the modern, mass-produced chickens here. They've just got giant, meaty breasts on them. When you look at the backside of a bird, it's flat, it's bony, it's ridgy. You can feel bones in there and everything. If you are addressing your bird to start breaking it down from this side, you know it's upside down, okay? So the back is flat, the breast is big, meaty, and rounded. I'm glad my cat is over here watching this. He's just doing great over here. Say hi to the nice people, Jack. Okay, so next you can see my wings here. You can see probably a little piece of neck hanging out on this side, okay? And then you got your legs, of course. You turn it around. This is kind of the back door here. This is where the butt stuff happens, okay? When you're looking in here, we can pull out several little giblets. And so I've got a heart muscle there. I've got a liver right there for your chicken livers, okay? I've got a neck for your chicken necks. And let me just feel inside there. Ooh, there's something else, okay? And that's a gizzard, okay? Just all muscle. I'm gonna separate these out. Just about everything here is muscle or bone. So I've got the gizzard, all muscle, as I said. The liver is a filter organ, lots of blood pumping through that all the time. Oh, my cat has really started noticing things now. I've got the heart. The heart is a muscle, okay? And I am kind of grouping that along with the neck here. The neck is muscle and bone. All of these items over here are great for your stock pot, or you can cook them up and work them into stuffing or whatever you want to do. You can eat this. It's all muscle. When you get to the liver's delicious. I didn't always like chicken liver, but I've kind of grown to like that a little bit. But I will not use this liver in a stock. We're going to be talking about stock making in a future class with all of the bones that I generate here and all of the meat bits that I generate here, all of these giblets. And so the liver, we can eat that. I can dust it with some flour and seasoning. I can saute it up, get it nice and golden brown, and then eat that up. But as far as the stock pot, you don't want filter organs in there. If we had kidneys in this bird as well, let me feel in there. I don't think I have kidneys. Kidneys are another filter organ. We don't want that in the stock pot, okay? So we're gonna kick those off to the side. I'm gonna throw them in a little bowl over there. And then the rest of these items, I've got another bowl here where I am just going to be collecting bones and meaty bits and things like that for a stock that I'm probably going to do the next time I don't have an interview, okay? And so also skin, bits of skin. Skin is very fatty. I happen to like throwing my skin and fatty bits into my stock pot because that is going to render out. Once I chill my stock, I'm going to have that chicken fat, and I can use that chicken fat for kitchen applications whenever I'm cooking. If I'm cooking a chicken dish, I want to cook it in chicken fat rather than butter or beef fat or some other fat, olive oil, things like that. I want the fat to be appropriate to the dish. And so you'll be seeing me adding fatty bits to my stock pot. And right now this bowl we're going to consider that my stock pot, okay? Now, going into this back end here, sometimes there's a bunch of fat kind of sitting here. There's a little bit right there, but I mean, sometimes there's a bunch there. Okay. So that's one of the first things I'll do is I'll pull that fat out. I'm pretending to pull it out right now, but this is a pretty clean bird right here. Okay. Another thing to point out when I turn this guy around, you get to the neck, I'll be pulling these breasts off. There's a lot of fat under the skin right there, and I'll be trimming some of that out as well. So one of the first things I'll do is pull out the giblets, pull out the fat, and then I'm ready to rock on my bird. Okay. And so away we go. I think I will go ahead and take this knife. Now, one of the things I want to do, let me get down here. I think you can see me, right? So I don't know if you can. One of the things I want to do here is I want to break this bird into as many cohesive parts as possible. I want to get as much mileage, educational mileage out of this bird as possible. So what you're going to see is I'm going to pull off an airline breast, a very common kind of higher end chicken cut that you see out there in the industry. I'm going to break down a wing for you and show you the different wing parts. I'm going to pull a leg off and show you a beautiful little French chicken leg. I'm also going to pull another leg off and bone it out, right? You get the idea. I'm going to try and get as much educational mileage out of this bird as I possibly can. And at the end, we'll lay out all the parts, review them, and we'll be done. So let's go ahead and do this. Okay, so one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the wishbone. I don't always pull the wishbone off, but when I pull the wishbone off, that means I can get all of the meat off of this carcass. The wishbone resides right along where the neck is. It's just kind of at this opening. If you feel the opening where the neck is, there's this A-shaped opening here, and you'll feel an A-shaped ridge of bone there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut on both sides of the bone. On this side, it's a very thin bone, and I'm going to cut on both sides of the bone on that side. And we're going to remove that wishbone. Once that's out of the way, it's going to be really easy to pull breasts off of this thing. Okay, so that's going to be one of the first steps. And like I said, I don't always do this. When I'm breaking birds in a professional kitchen, I'm often breaking them in under 2 minutes, okay? And so I don't really worry about that bone. But what I'm gonna do, now this is toward you, it's a little bit backwards for me, but I'm kind of used to doing these demos for students that are sitting in front of me. So I'm gonna kind of run my knife. I feel that bony protrusion. I'm using my finger to feel, I'm not really looking so much. I feel that bony protrusion, and I'm just gonna kind of scrape that bone on the inside, and I've just kind of exposed it right along there. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. We're on the inside of a capital letter A here, exposing the wishbone. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in, use about that much. You see how much knife blade I'm using? I'm going in about that deep, and I'm going to go on the other side of that wishbone there and pull it out. This will be a little tricky. It's funky to hold it like that, but you guys get the idea. So I'm feeling it. And I'm going to go ahead and enter, and my knife is right up against that wishbone. I've already scraped it on one side. I might do it again. And I've exposed that wishbone. I've kind of exaggerated it. I really scraped it, but you can see one part of that wishbone. It's really, really kind of hard to see. It's in there though. You can see a wishbone right there. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Ooh, the chicken just put a bunch of juice on my board. He kind of peed on my board. I'm barely going in. I'm not going in very deep. And I just cut the other half of that A. And again, it's a funny angle to do it away from myself, but I'm kind of used to doing that. And what I did is I busted my wishbone. So there's half of it right there. Piece of chicken just flew off and hit my studio light. And then Nick's saying, nicely done. I'm not feeling very nice about it myself, buddy, but thank you. All right, so I'm pulling that out, and there's a little bit more in there. Usually it's a nice little wishbone. Actually, to be honest, guys, I bust these guys in front of students all the time because I'm aggressive with it. There's still a little bit more in there. Right now I'm doing what I call digital surgery. I'm just feeling in there and pulling things out with my fingers. You guys get the idea. I pull out that wishbone. That's just going to allow me to show you a little more anatomy. If you guys are doing this quickly, you know, just quick, you would just cut right through that wishbone when you're there, okay? So what I want to do next is I'm going to pull a wing off of this thing. On the other side, I'm going to leave the wing on there, all right? That's going to show you an airline breast on one side. But for now, I'm going to flip this guy over. My cat's getting frisky over there. That's what cats are for. And so now you can see the back of the chicken. Again, it's flat, it's bony, it's ridgy. You can feel bones in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start taking off a wing here. And what I do is I kind of hyperextend the wing in the direction that it doesn't want to go. James is saying I got some innuendos here. And when I do that, the skin gets really taut here, and I'll take my knife and I'll just kind of give it a push or a pull. And I open it up, and then I crack that knuckle, and I can see a joint right there. It feels almost satisfying to crack that knuckle there. Once I see that joint, I'm going to go in with my knife and just follow that joint. But what I want to do is do a J-shaped cut away from the breast meat that's under here. So as soon as I get past that joint, I'm cutting away from the breast, so I leave that breast on there, and I did kind of cut that a little bit. So on one side, I'm taking off a wing, but I'm leaving the wing on the other side. I'm trying to show you as many chicken cuts as possible with one bird, okay? And so let's take a look at a wing, okay? When we're looking at a wing, that's kind of cool. You see how that wrist kind of stretches out when I do that. Anyway, when I look at a wing, I've got three parts to it. I've got the wing tip, TIP. I've got the wing flat. This is the one that has two bones in it. When you go to Hooters and you're eating wings, you run into the ones with two bones. The wing flat, F-L-A-T, and then I've got the drumette. Don't ask me to spell that, okay? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and cut this into three parts, because when we're making chicken wings, we want drumettes, we want flats, and then that wing tip, we are gonna use for other things, okay? So what I usually recommend is I find that little flap of skin at the base of the elbow of this chicken. Anybody know what that's called? Anybody know what that's called? I'll tell you, it's called the weenus, that little skin right there. I find where that weenus is, and I can usually just cut right through the joint right there. That little weenus right there tells you exactly how to cut. And that gives me a drumette, okay? The second part, to remove the flat, I just go in the crook of that wrist, and I'm able to cut right through that. And if you're off, just move your knife slightly, one way or the other, about a 37th or a 64th of a move, or a right or left, and you'll find that joint. And once you find the joint, your knife just goes right through it. So again, I have a drumette, I have a flat, I have a tip, and those are gonna go on a tray over here. Let me bring my tray a little closer. You can see it over on the edge. I'm gonna lay those out, and we'll review all of these parts a little bit later. Right now, I got a little juiciness here. I'm gonna get a little paper towel and wipe down. It's bugging me. I got my OCD kind of kicking in here. Some of my students might remember that about me. Got a little OCD, and I just can't work on a messy board. So let me get rid of that. And we're back, okay? The next thing I wanna do is I'm going to make an airline breast, basically, or I'm gonna set up an airline breast. And when I do that, I don't need a wing tip or a wing flat on this side. So I'm gonna remove the tip and the flat. So I find that weenus, and there goes the flat. Notice how my knife just went through that with like butter when I find the right spot. And then I'm gonna go through the wing tip. I'm gonna take that off, and the tip and the flat are gonna go on my board. And now I have a single drumette attached to this breast over here, and that is going to be what we call an airline breast a little bit later on, okay? We're getting close to removing the breasts on this bird. The next cut I do is more of a tip, okay? I like doing this next cut because it keeps my my bird kind of stable, okay? James has got the OCD himself out there as well. Thank you, James. So the next cut here is I'm going to just kind of split open the skin at the legs here and then crack them. They're going to lay flat and they're going to stabilize my bird. So when I do this cut, I'm not cutting deep at all. All I'm doing is opening the skin right here. And when I do that, you can see this big opening here, okay? And I'm going to do that again. I'll do it towards you this time. I pull that skin, I give it just the tiniest little cut. Whoops, I almost touched the meat there. But then I open that up and there's this giant opening. Look at that right there. There's not much holding this leg on. The next thing I do is I crack these joints, okay? And it's gonna look like this. It goes 1, you see that joint just popped out, and then I just turn the bird 2, and I just crack that. So the motion is boom, boom, and you've cracked those joints out. And now the legs are laying flat, and it acts as a kickstand to stabilize the rest of this bird while I work on it. I just think that's a great little tip right there, okay? So we're going to commence, people, in taking off these chicken breasts right now. I'm gonna take off one breast plain. I'm gonna turn that into a boneless, skinless breast that we call a supreme. And then, it sounds very French, and then I'm gonna take off the other breast. That's gonna have a drumette attached to it, and that is going to be my airline chicken breast. Very, very common out in the industry, okay? And so my bird is stable. Now that I've cracked those legs, we'll worry about them later. And next, what I wanna do is I've got my flexible boning knife ready to go, my scalpel basically. I'm going to feel the ridge of bone right up the middle of this chicken. Now, let me just take a minute. I'm going to get down here again. Can you see me? Okay. So if I cut this bird straight down the middle, what you would see is ribs radiating downward this way and a bone sticking up. The bone is called a keel bone. It would look like a Mercedes-Benz insignia, okay? That's what you would see if I did a cross-section of this bird. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut down the top of that Mercedes-Benz insignia. Again, that's the keel bone. And then we're gonna roll a breast off of this side. We're gonna cut down the other side of the Mercedes-Benz top logo thing, and we're gonna roll the other breast off the other way. That's what you're getting ready to see. Let me get back up here. Boom. Okay, so I feel for that ridge of bone, that keel, the top of the Mercedes-Benz insignia. And I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna start making one smooth, long cut, but you're gonna see me almost flex my blade up against that keel bone so I get all of that meat. Oh yeah, looks like Martina's out there. Thanks for joining, young lady. So here we go, one cut. I am on the left side of the keel bone. I'm up against the keel bone. I'm flexing that blade and I'm just doing one long, smooth cut. You never want to sit here sawing at the bird. You're going to get really ugly cuts. They're going to look all choppy. You want nice and smooth, just like when you're watching surgery on the Discovery Channel, okay? So I kind of opened that up, and what I've done is, see if you can see it here. I've pulled some of the breast off, and I've also exposed the chicken tender. It's sitting right there, right on top of the rib bones, right up against the keel bone, okay? I'm gonna open that up a little more so you guys can see it. I'm gonna go down this way a little more, and now you can really see, we've got the breast laying off on the other side, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of continue to pull off that breast, or I could roll the other side off. Let's just do that, okay? I'm gonna reinforce what we just did. I'm gonna feel the keel bone. At this point, I'm gonna be bending my knife the other way against the keel bone, going in this direction, and getting up as close to that as possible. And by the way, I should mention, you can see where removing that wishbone is helping me right now. Looks like we got a couple of people back. All right, yes. Thank you, folks. All right, so again, long, smooth strokes, just like surgery. I'm bending that blade against the keel bone there, and I made one long, smooth stroke, and I opened up the other side. You've got two breasts hanging out here. You've got two chicken tenders right there. And I think what I'll do, before I take off those breasts, why don't I get these chicken tenders out? Now, these come out fairly simply, and so I tend to just kind of get them started at the narrower end and just kind of work forward on these towards you guys, okay? So I'm gonna do the one on the right side, my right, maybe your left. Not sure how these things work in Hollywood land. And I'm just doing a little cut here and there, and I'm almost able to just roll it on out with my thumb. And that's basically it. That tender's out of there. One thing I want to point out, there's a tiny little tendon in there. We might just cut that out later. That's kind of tough. When we see these tenderloins kind of in the industry, they'll remove that and call it clipped. Clipped tenderloin is what that is. So I'm going to set that tenderloin on our board, our pan, and I'm going to remove the other tenderloin. This time I'm going kind of from inside out. And again, just a little cut. And I can kind of just roll that on out most of the way. It really just almost falls out. And there's my other tenderloin. You can really see that tendon on that one. Hey, Felicia's out there. Good to see you. Annie Fairburn. Lots of old students out there. Really cool to see you guys. Hope you're enjoying. This is all going to sound super familiar to you guys. All right, so what I'm going to do is I've got the breast on this side. This one I removed the wing from. This is just going to be kind of a plain boneless, skinless chicken breast when I'm done. I'm going to lift up my bird. The gravity is going to help pull that carcass or frame away from the breast. And I'm pushing on that carcass, bending my knife ever so slightly, and just shaving that out. You can see the rib bones exposed right there, maybe, if my camera was a little better. And right now it's just hanging by a thread. I'm just going to remove that the rest of the way. Mostly just hanging by skin. I don't want to
cut that leg. But there is one big old beefy breast there. By the way, this was about a 6-pound chicken, okay? It's just a monster. And you can see I've removed one of the breasts. I'm going to lay that one down. Next, I'm going to remove the other breast, but this breast still has a drumette attached. So there's just, it's the same thing, comes off really easy, but I want to kind of remove this breast. So what I do is I kind of grab that drumette is what that's called. And I feel inside for where that drumette is. And what I want to do is find the joint where that drumette is attached. So I'm just kind of feeling, not really looking. And if you move that wing around, you can feel where that joint is. And what I'm going to do is just stick my knife in there and cut forward. I'm going to do this backwards towards you. So I felt it right there. I'm going to stick my knife in there and go forward. It's kind of hard to do when it's backwards, but I think I just almost got through it. And I just separated that drumette, almost, let me get over here. I separated the drumette from the carcass, and now this whole thing is going to roll out with the drumette attached, okay? So I'm doing this a little bit cattywampus here, a little backwards. I'm flexing that blade against the carcass or frame. That's a common term out there. And I'm just going to do long, smooth strokes. It's really hard. I got to turn him around, sorry. And I'm just going to shave that meat off of there. I'm really just pushing on that carcass while I pull on that breast. You guys see that? And I shaved it. I always get a little cleaner on one side than I do on the other. By the way, out in the industry, if I'm breaking chickens, I'm doing it in 2 minutes or under. That's the standard. So there it is. You can see another enormous breast with the drumette attached. Let me get it in a better spot. There you go. So this is an airline breast. I do want to clean that up before I really do call it an airline breast. So let me move the chicken itself. We'll get back to the legs in a second. We're going to clean these breasts up. Now, first of all, looking at this airline breast, I want it in a fine dining restaurant. This is what you'd see in a white tablecloth service here, okay? And what I want to do is I see a line of fat there. I see some skin hanging off. I want to clean that off. Also, working in a butcher shop, you're putting these in your case. You want it to look super sharp. One thing I want to caution you on, don't trim this skin down too much, because when you cook it, the skin contracts. And if you trim the skin too much, it's going to look like a Band-Aid on there once it's cooked. Okay, so trim it as little as possible. I got a little more fat there. It just doesn't look clean. Okay, all these little meaty bits are going in my stock pot, my simulated stock pot for now. All right, it's like Nathan's back. And the other side's looking good. I want to flip this guy over. Make sure that it's looking good on this side. I did mention that there's a lot of fat at the front of that breast. You guys see that? I'm going to trim that off. Boom. Going in the stock pot. And I got a nice clean breast here, a little funky skin hanging off. I just pulled that off. The last thing I want to do with this is I'm going to take my chef's knife and I'm going to take that little knob of bone off the end here. And when I do that, when this chicken cooks, that's going in the stock pot, by the way, that's flavor. When this chicken cooks, this meat will contract down the bone and I'll have a Frenched, clean looking bone on the end there on that airline chicken breast when I present it. Okay, that's a good looking giant airline chicken breast. Little funkiness there. I'm going to trim that. But ultimately, I just pulled my chef's knife out to lop bone knuckles off. All right. If you guys have any questions, I have a comment line here. Go ahead and shout out your questions. But this breast is done. I'm going to set it on the tray. And this other breast, we're going to remove the skin. I'm going to do a boneless, skinless chicken breast. And in about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, depending on if I get some guests in here for interviews, I'm going to go ahead and make a consomme, and I'll use this breast meat for that consomme. So there's a line of fat along here. I'm going to remove that. I switched knives. Now I'm using my chef's knife for no reason. I really should have gone back to my other. I'm going to get rid of this knife. And a little more fat, perfectly clean. When I was in culinary school, this had to be perfectly clean. Some of my ex-students out there will tell you that. I got a little connective tissue right there. I just made a little tab with the tip of my knife. And now I'm going to hold that, get my knife, I pull on that, I get my knife underneath, and I trim that out. That goes in the stock pot over there. A little more connective tissue right there. Make a tab, hold on to the tab, pull it straight out, and trim it off. Come on, I can't grab it. There we go. Ooh. And there it is, your boneless, skinless chicken breast, or supreme, okay? This is straight out of culinary school. All my ex-students, we're doing a test to break this down in this manner. Okay, now I'm back to my chicken and I want to remove these legs. The big part about the legs is there's meat along this backside. I'm over on my back now and I want to pick all that up. You guys have all heard about the oyster, right? Hannibal the cannibal, he liked his oyster, right? The oyster's right in front of the leg here and I don't want to lose that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut from the back towards the head, okay? From the butt towards the head and remove that. What I can't do, I can't go straight down with this cut. I'm going to lose half of my oyster and a bunch of meat on the back. So what I'm going to do, there's a little bit of skin here I don't need. I'll trim that. Flip it around. I'll trim this meat off the other side to match. And I'm going to pick up my bird. I'm going to start at the butt end here, the back side, and I feel for the pelvis bone and I stick my knife right on that and I start moving forward. You can see I'm almost pushing forward with my knife here. And as I do that, I'm holding the chicken up a little bit. So the chicken, the gravity is pulling it away. And I've moved forward on the bird. And the minute I expose that knuckle that I popped out earlier, the tip of my blade is right on that knuckle right there. I'm going to hold the chicken down. I turn my knife downwards and I pull. And the oyster is right there. I left a tiny, clean pocket of meat right there. And that's where the oyster comes from, right there. Okay. So success, there is the elusive oyster right there, just in front of the knuckle, okay? So that leg I'm gonna set aside. I'm gonna pull the other leg off. Now the bird is backwards. You've gotta kind of be ambidextrous. How do you say that, right? Ambidextrous, that's it. You gotta be ambidextrous here. I'm gonna flip the bird over. That knuckle was popped earlier. And I'm going to start at the butt end and work towards the front, kind of holding my knife against the body like a T and moving forward, okay? So here we go. I got my knife on the pelvis. I'm really pushing that bird away from me. I got on the wrong side of the pelvis there. And I'm working up, and the minute I see that knuckle, it's right there. You see that? I think you can see it on the camera. I hold the bird down with my knife and I pull. And there it is again. Perfectly clean pockets where those oysters were. There's one, there's two. Beautifully done. Thank you, chef. Okay, and so as I said, like one side is usually a little cleaner than the other. So, you know, it's a righty-lefty thing, but there is my clean chicken frame or carcass. I'm gonna throw that in my imaginary stock pot, which is a bowl today. And if you want, you can break that down. But otherwise, let's take a look at our legs, okay? I'm gonna do a simple breakdown on these legs first. Once I break these legs down, we're about done with this demo, okay? Love the Yardbird oysters. Boy, so do I, James. You done said a mouthful there. Hey, Gina, good to see you, young lady. Lots of former students out there. Awesome. All right, so when I break the leg from the thigh, right? Leg, thigh, there is a line of fat. Right there. You guys see that? If you put your knife right on that line of fat, you're right where nature wants you to cut those apart. It's like nature gave you a dotted line here. So I just cut right there. I ran into bone. So if I go one side or the other, oh my gosh. Well, that's where nature usually likes me to cut. One side of that bone or the other. Let me get my other knife here. What's going on here? Usually your knife just goes right through that. There it goes. It was just a little tough. This is a big bird. But there's a line of fat there. I'll show it to you again on this leg. There's the line of fat, and that's usually denoting right where you put your knife to cut these across, okay? If you do hit bone, just move your knife 1 megamillimeter to one side or the other, and you'll hit that joint, okay? Now, I've got a nice leg. I've got a nice thigh there. And I think I'll do the same with the other. I've got my chef's knife now because this is kind of a heavier bird and I am hitting that joint. Come on, hello. Weird. It's more on the drumstick. Notice how have to cut into that drumstick a little bit to get that. And then I've got my thigh over there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a nice little Frenched chicken leg here that I might, stuff or something like that. So what I will do is I will knock this little joint off the end. There it goes. And when this cooks, that's going to French down on that bone, and you'll just have this beautiful clean bone sticking out. A little extra skin, I wouldn't want to put that in a butcher case like that, so I get rid of that. And there is my beautiful leg. Let me get a little more skin off of there. Boom, it's Frenched, and that will become a clean bone when it cooks. It can't help it. It has no choice in the matter. Next, I think I'll take one of these thighs and bone it out. I'm going to go back to my boning knife. I think I'll do the other thigh. That one was a little damaged. So with this, there's another line of fat running along that bone. And so what I do is I follow that with the tip of my blade. I'm not going in very far. And then I kind of angle my knife and go on the other side of that blade. And what I've done is I've exposed the bone. And then what I do is I put my two fingers together so they touch behind the bone, right? Once I do that, I can stick a knife in there, work it out. There's a little bit of a joint there. You get that. And now you've kind of exposed the top of that bone. And then I scrape it on down and then cut it. You always lose a little bit. And I've got a boneless thigh there. Okay. A little bit of connective tissue, a piece of a joint. Get that out of there. There's that tab I talked about. Turn my knife around, get underneath it. It's hard to grab. That goes in the stock pot. That bone goes in the stock pot. Everything goes in the stock pot. The count. Anybody remember the count? Sesame Street fans, come on. Who's with me? All right. So there's a beautiful boned out thigh. I think maybe we'll do that with this one as well. By the way, I mentioned making a consomme later. This thigh was already, the top was already exposed, so I'm just gonna bone it out. Scraping it on down the bone. I mentioned making a consomme earlier, and the thigh meat is excellent for that. It gives a lot of flavor, helps clarify. That bone's going in my stock pot. That little bead of meat goes in the stock pot, and I have a piece of joint in here. I kind of messed up that side. Pull that on out, and I'm looking pretty good on that. Turn it over, clean up any funk that I see, because that is funky. There it is. And gosh, I think the only other thing I could show you really is a tunnel boned chicken leg, okay? And so what I will do is I'm going to kind of work from the thigh side of that drumstick towards the ankle part of the drumstick, okay? Waka waka, I love it. Thank you, Gina. Gina said, pretty awesome spending her Thursday night like this. I'm paraphrasing, of course. So what I'm doing is I've got kind of a nub at the end of this, right? This bone has kind of a nub at the end. And what I'm doing is I'm cutting around that so I can start working my way down that bone. So I'm at the knuckle and I'm going up around it and cutting the meat away from that knob at the top of the bone. This is kind of a funky shape, but I'm about there, and I really want to cut all the way to the bone on that so I can start, I stand it up and I can start pushing the meat on down. There's still a little more that I need to cut right here. There it is. I've really exposed that knob at the top. And now I'm going to push that meat on down and basically turn that chicken meat inside out. And then I'll start scraping it, scrap the bone. Yeah. And it's all turning inside out now. And now that I've turned that leg inside out, again, we're tunnel boning this in preparation of maybe stuffing it with a chicken mousse or something. So I've pushed the meat all the way down to that knuckle at the end. You've got a knuckle at the other end where the ankle was. Then I get my heavy knife, only one knife on the board at a time, please. And then I cut that, get rid of this bone, get rid of that little piece of sinew. So cool. I love these. And then I turn it right side out again, if I can find everybody. There we go. And that still has a knuckle on one end, but it's completely hollow inside. And I can stuff that with a chicken mousse, you know, like a cilantro chicken mousse or something, roll that in chili seasoning, sear it off, and I've got like Mexican chicken, what we call ballotines, right? And we can serve them hot. That's a nice little appetizer or something. It feels kind of weird having my finger in there, so I'm pulling that out. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so I have got everything kind of done. I'm going to pull this nasty board. I'm going to get rid of my gloves and everything. And let's go over this bird one piece at a time. You can see I have a non-slip mat right there. That's always helpful. Oh, let you guys see me for a minute. I'm still here. Okay, we're still doing this. Looks like we're still working on Facebook. It's a wonderful life, okay? Now, first thing I want to show you is I've got tons and tons of bone and scrap. This is going to be the star of another show. I'm going to be working a stock in a week or two here, okay? So that'll be the star of that show. Sorry, I got a bunch of juice here. I got to get that. Killing me. Killing me. I can't handle it. I got to clean up. Sorry. It's my OCD. Dave Nelson's Fantabulous OCD show. Okay, so I don't have my gloves on, but here we go. I'm going to touch raw chicken. So starting out, the first thing we did was we pulled wings off. So again, I've got 3 pieces of wing here. I've got a flat, I've got a drumette, and I've got a tip. And then on the other wing, I left the other drumette attached to a breast here. And then I've got another flat. I've got another wing tip. Okay, boom. Next, I kind of broke out the legs, laid them flat to kind of hold things steady, and then I started taking off the breasts. Okay, here's one breast that I skinned and cleaned up. It's boneless, it's skinless. This is what we call a supreme out there. And then I have 2 chicken tenders. Okay, I promised you I would pull a tendon out of these guys, but I wound up not doing it. And I took my gloves off, so forget it. I'm not doing it. Forget it. Okay. Next, I have an airline chicken breast. This was kind of the star of the show. It is a little bit higher end appearance, and so we see that in white tablecloth restaurants. This one has a drumette attached. I knocked the knuckle off that drumette. When you cook this, that meat will contract down the bone and leave you a beautiful, nice, clean bone. I like taking the knuckles off of things because it looks less like a animal on my plate. Looks a little cleaner, okay? And so there's an airline breast. Next, I have 2 boned out thighs, my favorite, by the way. You can have your chicken breast all day long. I'm going for thighs every time. I just love chicken thighs. I have a Frenched drumstick. Okay, this is a back leg, and again, I pulled the knuckle off, and that's all you need to do for that meat to contract down when you cook that, and it's going to be a nice clean bone sticking out. I just love that appearance once it's done. And then finally, I tunnel boned this drumstick and left a little knuckle on the end, so it still kind of looks like a chicken leg, but you can fill that with a filling of your choice. Really, really cool. Okay, and so those are my chicken parts. I'm going to bring the show to an end. That was a pretty short one, I think. And had I not crashed and burned in the middle, it might have gone a little smoother. Okay, so there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That was the show tonight. Breaking chicken, okay, or breaking birds. That's what I called it. That name sounds even better, okay? Again, a valuable life skill. What happens when the zombie apocalypse comes and you don't know how to fabricate a chicken? Are you kidding me? You're gonna starve. You need to know this stuff. And I wish more people did. It's part of my life's mission to teach as many just simple cooking techniques as possible to the general public at large. This stuff ain't rocket science, and everybody should know it. And there's nothing I do that's as I said, rocket science, nothing I do that's any different than what your grandma did, you know, 50, 70 years ago or whatever, right? Breaking a chicken is breaking a chicken. Searing a chicken breast is searing a chicken, and so forth. There's nothing that those fancy chefs do that your grandma wasn't doing exactly the same, right? So I urge you to embrace the bird, embrace cooking, learn as much as you can about it, learn how to feed yourself. I think it's a wonderful thing for people to learn to feed oneself. themselves. And so please take it upon yourself to learn as much as you can. You can see me every Thursday night. If I'm not doing a cooking demo, I'm interviewing a cool food person. And if I am not doing that, then you can watch the archives. They're over on YouTube at Indie Cooks. I've got a channel with over 150 cooking videos and killer interviews with cool food people who know what's what. And so I urge you to go over there, subscribe, smash the like button, make comments, funny comments, what have you. Just don't make me cry, okay? That's all I got tonight, everybody. Thanks for showing up. I got a ton of students out there. Thank you guys for sticking with it. I hope this all sounds familiar. Please tell me that you remember this stuff from school, okay? Outside of that, we will see you guys on the flipper side, and that's all I have. So last thing, don't forget that the party is always in the kitchen. Ladies and gentlemen, class is dismissed.